Welcome to Turtle Talk. This is Morgan's story and the family's journey. I'm Craig, and
I'm Michelle. Welcome.
welcome back. The last time we left off, we were just finishing up about the first week down at the hospital in Nebraska.
Yes. Um, the first week was like really overwhelming. First, we're learning about insurance and that this is going to be a week by week thing, which was miserable in itself. They're very aggressive on therapy, which I truly appreciate because in the rehab world, passive is definitely not the way to go. And so we're learning all these therapies. They get her up, they get her dressed, they get her moving. So our day to day looks like getting her up 7 a.m. And then they get her cleaned up and they get her dressed for the day. And at this time, she's not eating, so we don't have meals to deal with. But she's getting tube fed through her G tube in her stomach,
Okay.
and she's still got her trach, right? Like she's still got her trach, so they're BiPAPing her at night, but that can be capped during the day when we're doing work. But if she gets a little low on oxygen and stuff, then we can BiPAP her with some air, you know. And then it's off to therapy. So like the first day we spent like 4 hours with an hour with each different therapist, so about 4 hours, coming up with a plan, which is actually day two, our first full day there. But by day three, I think it was, Morgan was aggressively already in 5 sessions of 5 hours of therapy right away. So we've gone from laying in a bed doing nothing or, a short little bit at the trauma hospital to doing 5 hours a day aggressively at the rehab center. So, it was usually like OT and PT in the morning and OT and PT in the afternoon, and speech popped on one end or the other with it. And so we got to meet all these therapists. Now, mind you, we're in the transitional care unit, so those therapists are different than the actual inpatient setting,
The long term.
the long-term stuff over in the other part. So we're meeting these therapists and stuff, and they're come up with this plan, and so they're doing things like, well, let's get Morgan sitting on the edge of the bed or the therapy table. So they'd sit her on there. Well, someone would always have to sit behind her, and it was kind of neat because they'd sit on one of those yoga balls, and then they were able to hold her, give her back support, and then they could hold her head because she's got pretty much zero muscle strength right now, right? Because we've been laying in bed. We haven't done any exercising. So everything she does, she was like jelly. So everything they did, and the plan is to help reinvigorate these muscles and trying to get them to start working. The term they threw around a lot was recreating muscle memory. So if you want to need a kick, you got to teach it how to do it so it connects with the brain, and the brain can say, oh, that's how my leg kicks. Doing different things like that. Speech worked an awful lot on different textures in her mouth, like ice versus water, or applesauce versus pudding, things like that, to try and get those movements working, and the swallowing mechanism, because we're not swallowing, right? So we have to start teaching these things, which Tom and I felt like on day 3, day 4, they came pretty quickly, right? Like that swallowing stuff came pretty quickly. So they'd work on things like that. The other thing was, once again, that tracking. We had talked about that at the rehab or at the trauma hospital. Her eyes being able to follow something and that's called tracking. And that shows, you know, all these things are showing that there's brain function going on there and to what level, right? So is the tracking increasing? Is it decreasing? You know, did it stop? Maybe that part of her brain is not working again. Her brain injury was so severe that it wasn't localized to one spot. So you hear different people or stories of people who have had brain injuries where they remove part of the skull to help with the swelling and pressure and things like that.
Right.
Because her brain injury was her whole brain. Like there was frontal damage and there was damage on each side. So they couldn't just take a skull cap off and relieve the pressure because it was everywhere. So, how much brain damage is she going to have? How much deficits is she going to have? What's the new normal going to look like? So, these are all things that now this rehab hospital is trying to identify. Where's her deficits? What is she starting to gain? How fast will this come back? And so everyday therapies would focus on different basic functions. They kept telling us it's like having a brand new baby that we're walking through all the steps.
Sure.
And I can't believe how disheartening that felt. You know, here's my 19-year-old daughter, and we're back to infancy. And the unknown is, how much is she going to get back?
Right.
And it was really sad. It was very, very sad because in the trauma hospital, they kept telling us that if she gets any gains in any of her functions, that they would only happen in the first year. And then that was it. Like her biggest gains would happen in the first year, and we wouldn't probably see much but little minute things after that. And that narrative carried over into the rehab hospital too. You know, all your big major gains are in your first year. So alls we can hear is the clock ticking.
Right.
Tick, 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 tick.
Clock from insurance.
Clock from insurance, clock from therapy, clock on, you know, are we going to, is pneumonia going to take her out?
Right.
You know, is she going to have a seizure randomly all of a sudden one day? So all these things were just, they're always in the back of your mind.
Depressing.
Very depressing. Very depressing. You know, and thank God there was church. I think that was my mental saving grace. That and the meditation gardens. Because I think without those two things, I probably would have lost my mind. Like there were times when you just think, I don't know how I can do this. I can't watch my child go through this. How do I do this as a parent? But then the alternative, if I did something really stupid, then I've left that mess for everybody else and I'm out of the picture. You know, not that I've ever been there, but let's be real here, right? Let's be real. At some point in somebody's life, you've always, everybody in this world has looked at their life and said, it might be easier to give up. There isn't a person out there who can honestly say that they've never had that fleeting thought cross their mind.
Right.
But I'd have a fleeting thought like that, and then I'm like, wait a minute. I made it tougher stuff than this, and my daughter is showing us she's way tougher than everybody expected, right?
Yeah.
And you're just trying to digest. There's so many things coming at you all at once and we haven't even talked about the legal part. Remember, we have lawyers here in this mix too, and we haven't even talked about that. But so there's lots of avenues. We're dealing with our children at home, Morgan in the hospital, his job, my job, insurance, legal. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of other crap swirling around there too, and we're like, which problem do you pick? How do you address it? And our only focus was we're going to focus solely on her and them. And
Right.
everything else will figure itself out.
Nothing else is as important.
No, nothing is as important as our children. So we just thought, you know what? We're going to stand united as a family, and we're going to figure this out, and we're going to take this journey as a family one step at a time. And that's all we could do. So then, I spent a lot of time in church. So we're going through all this therapy, right? 5 hours a day, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting because we want to help, but we can't really help. So we got to watch. So then we start asking questions, and I think we kind of became irritating
To the therapist.
to the therapist. Why are you doing this? What is this going to work on? What's the science behind it? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, we were forever asking questions. But I wanted to know, why are you doing what you're doing? Because if it's something that maybe in the evenings or on the weekends that we could work with her on outside of therapy, I want to know these things.
Right.
Like, I'm going to do everything I can to help her.
Right.
Right? So we're rolling into the second week. Everybody's kind of getting used to everybody else. And Morgan gets a staph infection. 103 fever. They had to do a culture. Finally figured out what it was and on antibiotics. But we really didn't. I think she only missed one day of therapy. Like, we're going to keep on going, and the poor thing, I mean, talk about feeling miserable, having to do this. And we had, it was a weird situation because there was like a nurse practitioner or somebody that kind of hung around the hospital more, but then there was also other doctors, and we had this other doctor, but we didn't see that other doctor, saw him right away, like day 2 or something. I don't know. It was just different. The whole thing was just kind of different. So we meet this doctor, and immediately, well, here's some meds she's on. Let's add a few more to try this and try that. So we're like, well, we don't know any better. So we're like, okay, and so new meds are added. We watch her close. We keep taking notes. I was very thankful for church. So by the end of the first week and through the weekend, we had gone to church, and we're kind of realizing that, wow, there's people that come from the outside, and people are very friendly. Even some of the patients there was this one lady, she couldn't speak, and she just cruised all over in her little wheelchair, and she was so excited to see us, and she, she could understand, she could hear us, she just couldn't talk. And, so I told her about Morgan's accident and stuff, and she'd wheel her little chair and go grab somebody and pull them back over. So then I'd have to tell the story again. And so we ultimately ended up meeting a lot of people just in that first week through church. And they all just, wanted to hear her story, hear what happened, why we were there, and, we're going to pray for you. And we thought, this is pretty comforting. Like, in the craziness of this rehab hospital, there is this calm in the storm. And so, we met a lot of people. And one day, and I don't remember, I'm sure it was within the first couple weeks, maybe. I don't know. And I'm going to kind of jump around a lot here because time was surreal. So trying to remember when exactly things happen. It's hard. But anyhow,
You're forgiven. We'll get to it.
We'll get to
At
it.
some point, we'll get to it.
Even if we backtrack, we'll
Yep.
get to it. So when this gentleman came up to us and he said, "Hi, my name is Mike." And we're like, "Well, hey, Mike." And he said, I want to give you some hope. And we're like, "Okay." And he said, "I had a severe traumatic brain injury." And he said, "I got T-boned by a semi. I died a couple times. I was in and out of hospitals, rehab centers, and I'm looking at this man and he's talking, he's walking. It's a little slow on the draw, but like his gait and stuff was a little slow, but I was just like, I just stood up and I hugged him and I hugged him and I hugged him and I said, "Oh my gosh, thank you for the hope." Because when you can see another person with a TBI and they're doing things in the world, then the death sentence gets a little less in your mind, right? So we became really good, fast friends with Mike. And later at some point, Mike said, "I just finished helping." He goes, "I volunteer here." He said, I was a patient here. Now I volunteer here because I feel that I have time and a need to help other people. He said, my last family I was helping, they just left. He said, and I was sitting in church and I was praying about who I should help or if I should be done. And he said, there you guys were. He said, so Morgan's going to be my next person. I'm like, oh my goodness. So Mike would stop in periodically throughout the day as he was volunteering and stuff. And then every evening when he got done with his volunteering stuff, or even if he was at home, he'd come back and he would sit with Morgan for an hour. That 1 hour so Tom and I could leave and go get food or, go buy deodorant or shampoo or, because we never really left, so that was such a blessing. And Mike would sit in there. And the first few times he came, I would just sit with him and we just pray. We just sit and pray. And then I really got to know him. And then I felt comfortable leaving him and Morgan together. And boy, he was good at keeping the aides and the nurses in line for her. So if he didn't think something was right, he would speak up for her. And it was really, really such a blessing to have Mike. So Mike is a pretty important person to us, and we're still friends with him. And eventually I'm hoping we can get Mike on for an episode because his story is unreal. Yeah. It's amazing what that man has endured and the positive he has on life. So we're excited about Mike. But anyhow, reversing a little bit back to our day, 5 hours of therapy, go to church, then we'd spend time in the meditation garden. Then we go back to the room, and because there's only so much time you can sit in a room, right? Like no matter what hospital you're in, those walls close in quickly. So then in the evening, we had a big picture window on Morgan's room. Like it was almost one whole wall was just a glass window, which was wonderful, except in the winter. But that's okay. So in the evening, we'd sit there and we'd watch TV. Well, now we're waking up Morgan's senses by doing therapy. And we're not giving her sedation medication because we want to start waking her up and having her kind of help function, see what she can do. So all of a sudden now we're not sleeping. We'd sit and watch TV in the evenings. They'd get her ready for bed. I'd spend some time primping, maybe painting her nails, just
mom-daughter stuff,
praying with her.
Yeah.
I spent countless hours saying one rosary after another for her healing, and it just that that was our only saving grace. You just bury yourself in prayer and you just keep saying, God, I'm going to give it to you. That's all I can do. I give it to you. So, and then of course she's not sleeping now. No sedative medicine,
Sure.
and she doesn't sleep. So, we're desperately tired and need to sleep, but neither one of us, Tom nor I, felt like we could leave her because she's awake. How can we leave her? How can we leave her with strangers?
Right.
What if she needs something? So the night nurse, the head night nurse, was amazing, and she finally convinced us after the first week to, all right, you guys, you got to at least go change clothes, and maybe it wasn't even the first week. I think it was like the first 3 or 4 days. She's like, you guys got to go. You just got to go change your clothes, go take a shower, whatever you need to do. She's okay. I promise you, she's okay. So reluctantly, it was like night 3 or 4. We'd stay until we thought she was dozing off, which was usually like midnight or 1 in the morning. Anywhere between 11 and 1, she'd start dozing. So we'd tiptoe out and we'd go to the house that we had. And you'd jump through the shower real quick, maybe throw a load of clothes in the washer, and you'd crash. And the next morning, we'd jump up, and we were up by 5, like 5:30. We were up.
The therapy people.
We had to beat the therapy people. So you jump up, you run down, throw your clothes in the dryer, make a cup of coffee, maybe a piece of toast. I don't know. There was food in the fridge. Somebody had got us groceries at some point in time. I think it was my mom got us groceries. But I think we threw away more food than we ever ate in the house. We just weren't there,
Right.
And so then we'd race back. We'd be there by 6:30 at the latest. And then we were there for her and she'd be wide awake. But then a head night nurse, oh, we loved her. There were like quite a few. The night staff we really truly loved. They were great. But the night charge nurse, she would sit in Morgan's room and do her charting just to keep Morgan company. It was like, okay, if I'm not there, I really love this nurse. And I'm so thankful for her, So like I said, they nicknamed her Princessa Morgan. They wrote it on her dry erase board, with all her information. And they drew like little crowns on there, all these different colors, and it's Princessa Morgan. And oh my gosh, they'd walk in. So how's the princess today? And it was funny because later on, when her facial expression started, it was so comical watching her eat that up. She was such a little ham about it. To this day, Princessa Morgan has stuck. Yes.
She loved it when I was giving Adam a hard time when we got here.
Yes. Yes.
So
I
can only imagine.
She is such a ham all the time. But at this point, we're just trying to find any responsiveness. And, we learned a lot about night music therapy and frequency therapy, so we brought our Alexa, the one with the screen. We had one at home and we had one there. So at any point, the kids could call their sister through the Alexa and talk to her. It was so awesome. I mean, that is like the best invention ever.
Yeah.
It afforded the kids the opportunity to jump in and see her whenever they wanted. So even in the evenings when we're all just sitting there, they turn theirs on, we turn ours on, and we could be as a family, at least through the Alexa. So thank God for Alexa. Irritating, but thank God for Alexa. So that really helped us bridge some of the gaps, you know. And the first 2 weeks were the worst for being separate, because on week 2, I think it was Tom stayed and I went home.
Yeah, that's what you said.
You know, and
Heart-wrenching.
heart-wrenching. It was so heart-wrenching. You know, so in the first 2 weeks, we, you know, we got the schedule. We're doing 5 hours a day of therapy. We're trying to stay unified as a family through Alexa. We're just trying to figure it out.
How long did the staph infection last?
You know, I think by about day 3 or 4, they had her on antibiotics, and then that started clearing up.
Okay.
So, you know, by the end of by day 7 or 8, she was starting to get better. However, we kept having fevers, and that's what we couldn't figure out.
Just out of nowhere.
The fevers kept coming, and low grade, high, all over the place. Her numbers were all over the place. So, you know, let's add some medicine on. Maybe it's brainstorming. They call it storming because brain's trying to heal and trying to do new things. And, you know, so there was a medicine added for that. The fevers continued. It just made for a stressful situation of a bunch of unknowns again. But she showed no other signs of any other sickness because the staph is being taken care of by the antibiotics. So why the residual fevers? What's going on? So now we have to figure out fevers.
Next time.
Next time, we'll talk about it again. Thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate it. We love hearing from you guys. So keep the comments and the questions coming for us.
Yes. Love the questions. Please subscribe. Go to www.givemorgan.org or visit me at my real estate website, realtorcraigbertrand.com. And we always want your questions, comments, like, and share wherever you listen or watch.
Thank you.
Thank you.